Hey, everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the evening. Joining me, as always, is Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter. It is Charlie O'Connor. What's going on today, Chuck?
You know, we're midway through the week, just pushing through.
I'll tell you, we're going to reveal the poll results for next week's Tuesday Reviewsday. Really happy with the response we got to it. Everyone loves Slapshot, but looks like it's going to come down to a Mighty Ducks versus Mystery Alaska. So we're going to get to both at some point, but it looks like that's what it's going to come down to. Okay. We did have one request to do a D3, but I made it clear, Charlie doesn't make a ton of demands, but Charlie has demanded we never touch D3 because it's a piece of shit.
I don't want to watch D3 again. I refuse.
Dave Haxtell is the head coach.
Dave Haxtell is the head coach.
We're gonna make Charlie Conway play defense. But yeah, it's we're gonna get to that. But hope everyone enjoyed the Slapshot stuff yesterday. And listen, we are deep into it now. Everyone's at their cottages. Everyone's at their shore houses. The NHL offseason, emphasis on the word off, is it's in full swing right now. So we're going to have some fun today, though, and it's I'm dubbing this What If Wednesday.
What If Wednesday?
That's what we're going to do, I think, on Wednesdays for the next couple of weeks here while, absolutely nothing is going on. Hypotheticals. Just kind of throwing hypotheticals at each other, some different scenarios for the upcoming season. We're going to get to those, but first, Scott Laughton made an appearance today, and he was on Daily Faceoff, the morning cup of coffee show there on their YouTube page.
So this is the show that Frank Saravalli is on.
This
correct?
is the one Frank Saravalli is not on. It's Daily Faceoff's YouTube page, but a different iteration of Daily Faceoff. It was a good interview. Said some interesting stuff today, but there was a pretty big, as you would assume, because John Tortorella is the face of the franchise. I mean, soon to be supplanted, hopefully, by Matvei Michkov, but a lot of Tortorella questions. I just wanted to run through some of this stuff today.
Yeah, well, that was why I asked because I have not listened. You told me that he was on. I was like, oh, cool. But I know, obviously, Frank runs Daily Faceoff. The reason why I wonder that is because Frank has been out of the national media members, has been the most critical of John Tortorella's fit in Philadelphia.
Yeah. Definitely.
So that is why I was interested, because it appears that Scott Laughton went on the show and was pretty complimentary of one John Tortorella.
He was.
And I was curious as to how Frank would respond to that, given the fact that Frank did not agree with the Tortorella hire to begin with, and also was one of the reporters who, and granted, like I did too, but he was probably even more forceful than I was reporting that there was significant dissension in the locker room following the Sean Couturier scratch. So it was just an interesting thing that now Scott Laughton is going on the Daily Faceoff show that is, maybe not a show that Frank Saravalli is on, but a show that he manages, presumably, and saying relatively good things about John Tortorella. It's interesting.
Yeah, there hasn't been an actual, I think the Daily Face-Off with Frank since July 1st. Seems like they're on their summer hiatus.
Yeah, he probably went to the cabin.
And and the other shows are kind of pumping out the content.
Fair.
Maybe I'm wrong, but at least that's the way it looks on their podcast feed. But I would check this out. It's on their YouTube page if you want to see the whole show. But there was a lot of Tortorella stuff, and he kind of didn't mention the Couturier thing specifically, but just talking about Torts, just the change since he's come in, and he was very complimentary of John Tortorella, was Scott Laughton, saying he's been huge because he holds you accountable, and not just the young guys, but the older guys too.
Oh yeah,
everyone gets held to a similar standard, and how do you deal with that and everything? Because he was talking to just about the Sean Couturier thing, going and meeting with Danny Briere, and it's Danny's really close with Sean. They lived together at one point, and he's just it's never personal with Torts, and that's just something you have to know going into it. He's doing what he thinks is best for the team, and everyone's gonna get it at some point.
Yeah,
that's no matter who you are. Sean Couturier, who we thought he wasn't really around the first year of Tortorella, but it was my God, if there's a player on this team who least the coach, every coach's favorite is Sean Couturier. No, he's going to get it too. And like you see it, Travis Konechny, they had their early issues and then it moved on. And you see it with Morgan Frost, you see it with Bobby Brink, but basically everyone gets it at some point.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to think of a player on this team that has either been publicly reported or I've heard privately that like has had John Tortorella either give him shit behind closed doors or actively scratch and or cut his ice time or his role.
Yeah.
So it is a thing where even for his favorites, like, do I think it's a little unfair that Morgan Frost seems to get held to a different standard than Owen Tippett? Yes, I do. I think that is Tortorella letting his favoritism play in. However, the first year he coached this team, Tortorella did, he pushed Tippett hard, especially in the first half of the year. And not a lot of that got out because it was all just like, you know, yelling behind closed doors and calling him out in tape studies and whatnot, which, like, I mean, he does that to everybody. But again, from what I heard, he pushed Tippett very, very hard. And then Tippett came out the other side. And that's one of the reasons why he really likes him and gives him a longer leash. But just because I think that he maybe shows favoritism to Tippett versus Frost, it doesn't mean that he hasn't given Tippett shit before he has.
And I think there's that famous, it was from maybe the preseason or an early season game, year one with Torts, and he's just yelling at, and it's like instructive, but he's like giving it to Tippett pretty good, where he's like, I don't know what you are. Are you a scorer? Are you a grinder? Right. Like, show me who you are. And he has. Yeah, I think, like, he has come out on the other side of that. But like thinking about this, that like everyone's gonna get it, and everyone has gotten it from Torts at some point. We've talked, and this will come up again in the hypothetical part of the show, right, about Michkov and Torts. It feels like he's gonna have to, like, even if it's all pretty okay with Michkov from the start, like he's giving him what he wants, he is going to have to, because these guys, a majority of them, have been with Tortorella for a year or two. They've seen Sean Couturier scratch. They've seen Cam Atkinson, his favorite, scratched. Yeah. They've seen him even, cut Scott Laughton's ice time. They've seen all this stuff happen with Kevin Hayes, Ivan Provorov. He's going to have to give it to Michkov just to kind of create balance in the locker room. No,
I would agree. I would say that
especially given the hype.
Well, we talked about it I think last week when we talked about Michkov, about the fact that some people were concerned. We had commenters, we had people in the mailbag concerned about the idea of, could Michkov get a swelled head? What happens if he starts thinking too highly of himself? And it is true that because of the hype that understandably surrounded him, the fans are putting him up on a pedestal. And in that locker room, there is the potential for players. I don't necessarily think most of the players, but there's the potential for a little jealousy where you're like, hey, what is this kid proving? This kid hasn't proven shit. He comes in and everybody cares about him way more than us, who are NHL veterans or established quality NHL players. One way to deal with that very quickly is to do some Tortorella justice, which he is very willing to do. So I would not at all be shocked if 2-3 weeks into the year he sits him for a third period after he blows a coverage or something, and then it's a huge thing and people on Twitter go crazy, because of course they do. But like that, you can't tell me that part of the reason why Tortorella screwed with Sean Couturier wasn't because he was the captain, because it was very much a like Tom Hanks, I'm the captain now kind of thing. Like, yeah, you might have to see, but I run this friggin' team. Like, yeah, you're the captain of the players. I'm the captain of this ship.
I'm the general or whatever.
Yeah. And I do suspect that Tortorella at some point will do that to Matvei Michkov. Absolutely.
Yeah. But I will say, like, the Kevin Hayes thing came up several times, and I don't think it can be understated how big a deal this was in the locker room, that he's not on the team anymore. They clearly clashed personality-wise while Kevin was on the team. But the fact that he stuck up for him the way he did in front of the cameras, that meant a lot to everyone in that room a year later. Like, it was a big deal. And I think that is part of what makes Torts, even though there's this perception of him that, like, Jesus Christ, give it a rest, dude. He does have
which is fair.
Yeah, and like
it's a lot to be coached by John Tortorella.
Yeah, and like they said, like, listen, we do have fun with it. Like Travis Konechny is apparently always fucking with him. Like, he's always just like, yeah, okay, like in Tampa Bay, that game he actually got kicked out of, but like they're honoring the 04 team, and he's the coach. And like Konechny was giving it to him on the bench the whole game. And like that's just part of the relationship where
Konechny gives everyone shit, though.
But he can be one of the boys still. But that Kevin Hayes thing, I don't think, like we've talked about it with Ant Sanfilippo and the way that all went between he and Torts. Part of that absolutely was, I don't want to say a show for the locker room, but just a little reminder that, yeah, I'm an asshole, but I have your back too.
I'm your
like,
asshole.
Yes, like that. I'm your asshole is a very funny thing to say. But yeah, like he does have the dude's back, and that I think is part of why, while we have this perception of Torts, like you look at his resume and go like, how the fuck did he last as long as he did it? Basically every stop. Like you think of him as a dude, it's like 3 and out.
Right.
And outside of the 1 year in Vancouver, that has never been the way it is for him. And this is why, I think.
Yeah. I think we talked about this when the Hayes Sanfilippo situation happened. That, and I've made this point actually last week when I was talking about the idea of pandering, that something can be simultaneously sincere and calculated. Yeah. That it can be sincerely calculated. That John Tortorella was sincerely annoyed that Kevin Hayes was presented as the villain in the Cutter Gauthier saga, and he felt like that was unfair, and he was righteously angry at that. By the same token, he also probably, before he did what he did, thought about it and thought to himself, you know, this will probably play well in the room because Kevin Hayes is still very, very popular, and there are probably still people in that room that are a little resentful that I forced him out because I didn't think he could play my way. So something can be sincere and also calculated. And I think that was one of those things that was both sincere and calculated to have an impact on the room.
Absolutely. Just a couple other little things I wanted to touch on from this interview. Asked about like Danny, Jonesy, and Hilferty and the whole gang and everything. He said everything around the rink is better. They come in and shake your hand after every game like Ed Snyder used to. Like, it's just the family feel of maybe when Scott Laughton was like very young, or even before that, and he heard stories of what it used to be like, and then it wasn't that way. So like, while we see the little things and we're like, oh, they're doing a lot of fan service, which is great. Like, I love fan service. I am a fan and would like to be serviced. Like, it's my money, goddammit. You know? The fact that they are restoring that, I think, is important just in terms of, especially given like the Gauthier, the Kolosov situations. It's like, yeah, but the perception of the actual NHL players here is this is a great place to play. Like, and I want that because, as we've said, they're going to have to attract some free agents or make some big trades at some point, and they're going to have to come here, you know?
Not only that, I mean, it's a combination of the two.
And stay.
Like, here's the thing. I've said multiple times that I'm not particularly enthused by the idea of building this team via free agency. Sometimes you get lucky and you get an Artemi Panarin, but a lot of times the guys you get in free agency that you think are elite guys are either not actually as good as you thought they were, or they were good and now are not. Sometimes you get a Panarin and you get a superstar, but it's pretty rare. I'm more in favor of trades, but one of the parts of trades you have to remember is a lot of times the reason why star level players are being traded is because they don't want to stay with their team. So if you're trading for a star level guy, you're trading for him with the knowledge that he will re-sign with you. And if you want to convince a Mark Stone that you're a better environment than Ottawa, you have to build that environment, because what did they do? What did Vegas do the minute they traded for Mark Stone? They signed to a long-term deal. Like, that's how this works. So trading in a lot of ways, especially when you're trading for these star guys, it is trading to get a jump on giving him the big deal so he never even hits free agency in the first place. And to do that, you have to have a place where people actually want to re-sign.
And if you're acquiring somebody with some term, there's a good chance, if it is a high-level player, they have some sort of protection.
Exactly.
They're going to have to want to come here.
Exactly.
If Claude Giroux wanted to go to one place, it would be nice to be that place.
And I do also think it's important. We just spent a lot of time talking about John Tortorella.
Yeah.
I do think it's important for, if the Flyers are and who knows how much longer the John Tortorella reign is going to extend to. But if the Flyers are going to continue to have John Tortorella as their coach, there are going to be, not everybody, but there are going to be players who don't feel like playing for John Tortorella and don't feel like dealing with the circus that is a John Tortorella run team. So if you're going to have him as your coach and you still want to attract players, everything else better be great. Like the atmosphere, the locker room better be the most fun. The higher ups better treat you so well. The facilities better be the best. The city better be great, because all that stuff has to outweigh the fact that you have to play for John Tortorella.
Yeah. And it was funny. Like one of the things Laughton said about Torts was like, well, he's always going to have your back. You know what he's going to, okay. You don't always know what he's going to say, but you know he's going to fight for you and have your back. And it was like, yeah, man, it's insanity here. One other thing that I really
There's some people that understandably do not want to, I'm not even going to say play for. I'm going to say work for a crazy person. And Tortorella is a crazy person.
Especially like you're getting like a 31-year-old to help you for like in the next year or three, whatever. Like you're making your push, the window's open. It's like, God, is this how I want to like close it out?
Exactly.
Like,
Well, that was why I always said why the hiring of Torts in Vancouver was always nuts. It's like, you really think he's going to come in and the Sedins are going to buy into this? Yeah. We're Hall of Famers, man. We don't have to deal with this crap.
I'm 33. I don't want to block shots. You know what I like doing? Playing every night. He said last year was maybe the toughest year the way it ended, because they were in a playoff spot all year, blowing it, and just that, like, God damn it, we were there. I think that really speaks to, like, one, how much the locker room wanted it, and two, like, yeah, the last few years have been tough, but this year was like, God damn, we were there.
They were there.
And they just didn't have it. And I like that he said the young guys are going to have to take the next step for us to do anything. Like,
it's true.
While there is, hey, man, this is a rebuild. We're developing. It's like we are counting on, there might be some sort of, I don't know, behind the scenes, maybe resentment of what Michkov is or whatever. But, like, no, we need him. Yeah. We very much need him to be what they tell us he's going to be if we are going to take another step.
They know that.
And they are clearly acknowledging that. So, like, I don't think there's going to be that locker room issue just based on that one little sentence. I think that's good.
Well, it's just the reality. And Laughton has, paid attention to this offseason just like we have, and has seen that the Flyers didn't really get anybody. They got Michkov, which huge, but like he was already in the organization in theory. It's not like he was a new acquisition. He just came over sooner than they thought. They didn't go out and really add anybody, really. Same group. So Scott Laughton is not, he's not old, but he's not a young guy. He doesn't have a ton more years left. So if he only has 2 years left on his contract. If he wants to get to the playoffs and he wants the team to succeed, which he obviously does, he wants to be on a winning team. He knows that that's not going to come from the big acquisitions they made this summer. It's going to come from, Cam York and Joel Farabee and Tyson Forster and Owen Tippett and Jamie Drysdale and Sam Ersson taking steps, because it's like all we got, all we need. Like this is what they got. And they know from last year that what they had, I guess sans Michkov, wasn't enough to make the playoffs. So if they're going to make the playoffs, which is what Scott Laughton wants them to do, because he's not focused on, like, we're focused on what's the timeline. When's the team going to be a cup contender? Scott Laughton, understandably, is not focused on that. Scott Laughton is not like, well, in 4 years, things will be great. It's like, in 4 years, I might not be in the league.
In 4 years, I'm going to be 34. Yeah, like, that's it.
So he's focused on how are we going to get better now, and he's looking at this roster and saying to himself, if we're going to get better now, like, it's not going to be because I took an enormous leap at age 30.
Yeah, that would be
It's going
wild.
to be because the 22 and 23 and 24-year-old guys got significantly better year over year, and maybe they will. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
No, and the final thing that I wanted to point out from this interview, the last question of it was, does January 11th, 2025 mean anything to you? And they're trying to get
a
him to
rise out of
say
him,
he knows when the Anaheim game is. Like, he has the Cutter game scheduled. And
circled.
yes. Does he have it circled? And he did. But he said, I just looked at the schedule and Radko and I planned a dinner for the night before.
Radko.
So that's like one of his best
The
busts.
butcher.
Because they asked him about, like, I guess there was a tweet from like 2 years ago, like, hey, does anyone know about how Scott Laughton feels that he loses his best friends at the deadline every year?
Yeah.
And like
Lost
Radko,
Radko.
Haig, Raff, those were all like his best friends. And
That said, Laughton is basically best friends with everybody.
Yeah.
He's just a genuine likable guy. The only guy who wasn't the only guy who wasn't best friends with was Ivan friggin' Profile.
Yeah. And they just like, he started naming dudes, and I was like, you just named half the roster from the last 5 years. But yeah, so it was like, yes, I know what that game is, but like, I just planned a dinner with Radko for the night before.
That's why.
So I know when that game is. So,
but also he knows.
Yeah, he
knows what the fans are going to do.
Do you think, like, it would be one thing if it was like, if Provorov was like some huge villain and like talked a bunch of shit on his way out of town and like, we're fucking getting him, circle that game. But like, Cutter Gauthier was never here.
Yeah.
Like, they drafted him. He was at like one development camp. He wasn't at the last one. Like, he was never here. Do you think they give a shit at all?
So,
like, they know the fans do, probably.
Yeah. So what I will say is, it's definitely going to be bigger for the fans and probably the organization. Like Danny and Jonesy and all them, they're going to be hoping the Flyers kick Cutter's ass because they feel betrayed and they feel lied to and whatever. Like, they're going to be livid about this. The players, no, I don't think. I think there's some bitterness there in terms of this guy who they thought was going to be the Michkov. He was the Michkov before Michkov. He was top 5 pick, and it's like, he's going to come help us. Obviously he talked to Hayes before he didn't sign, but like Hayes was friends with everybody, so I'm sure he met some of these guys, and they probably feel a little betrayed. But I do think it's more for the fans. That said, the players know that the quickest way to the fans' heart is to blow up Gauthier on like the first, second shift. Like, they're fully aware. Like, they want to play to the crowd. And the easiest way to play to a crowd that is like figuratively and literally going to be out for blood that night is to crush Cutter Gauthier and show up the kid. So I don't think there's a lot of personal animosity. There's a play into the crowd element to this, I'm sure.
I do want, like, if Garnet Hathaway is just like, give me that first shift. But I will caution everybody. Let us not forget, Darian Hatcher knocked out Sidney Crosby's teeth, and that was all well and good.
Yeah, and then he tortured the Flyers for 2 decades.
And then just like that game, he scores the winner. Like,
yeah, that's true. I was at that game.
And then, and then, the next 20 years were his personal bitch. Like, so be careful what you wish for. But I don't think even the highest people on Cutter Gauthier's talent think like, oh yeah, the next Crosby. So also he's out there. And, we play him twice a year.
As long as he stays out west, they're not going to play him a lot unless he, decides he doesn't like Anaheim either and forces his way out of there too.
We're going to play them in a cup final. It is going to happen. It's just like Patrick Kane. All right, before we get into the What If Wednesday portion of today's show, I got to tell you about the #1 casino in Pennsylvania. It is Bet Parks Casino, and Parks Casino is perfect for after-work get-togethers, date night, or even girls' night out. You can sip on tantalizing drinks and soak up those warm weather good vibes right now at Parks Casino. Parks Casino, this is how you win. It's my casino of choice, and it offers an epic $5 happy hour with great food and drink every Wednesday through Sunday at the Liberty Bell Gastropub. You can enjoy $5 drafts of Forged Stout, Victory Seasonals, or Parks Pilsner, plus $5 glasses of Albertoni Cabernet, and the drink of the summer, $5 Twisted Tea, frozen whiskey, Arnold Palmer's. God damn, every time I read that, sounds delicious. Plus, you can feast on flavor-packed $5 small plates of braised short rib sliders, hot honey chicken sliders, or rotisserie chicken flatbreads. The all-new epic $5 happy hour happening right now at Parks Casino. Summer is here. All roads lead to Parks, the #1 casino in Pennsylvania, with 3,200 state-of-the-art slots, 115 live table games, beautiful poker room, a collection of incredible award-winning restaurants. You can check out Joe Conklin's comedy night with different headliners every other Thursday. The best cover bands every weekend at the 360 Lounge. Headliners every weekend at the 1,500-seat Excite Center at Parks. Just announced you can see Tiffany Haddish on September 27th. Tickets for all shows available at parkscasino.com. Visit parkscasino.com. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Parks Casino, this is how you win. And while we're here, maybe you need to pay. You're going to the casino, you maybe need a little bit of money. Well, if you need to hire, you need Indeed. We're all driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search, it's to match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. You can ditch the busy work with Indeed and use it for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality of matches compared to other job sites. How do they do it? They do it by leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day so that Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. You can join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right. Travis Konechny was also on Flyers Daily today. I suggest you check that out. Pretty good. That's the other thing I wanted to get to, Charlie. This Michkov, the center thing, has been going around. And you had a little tweet thread about it today.
So I did my diehard mailbag tomorrow. Hopefully I'll have my free mailbag, but I got the diehards out first because I wanted to get that out before the end of the month. But I had multiple people. I had one person in our diehard section in our Discord for diehard members only, and then I had about 2 or 3 people in my call out for questions on the free mailbag for PHLY at allphly.com, asking about the Michkov at center thing. And I get it. This was the thread that I had because I was like, look, I answered this question in the diehard mailbag, but not everybody's a diehard. Y'all should be, but not everybody is. I understand. It's not cheap. It's worth it. It's not cheap. That said, I felt like this was something that should be said on Twitter because there are a lot of people who I think, understandably, are looking at the Flyers' current and future depth chart and see a big old gaping hole in that 1C spot. And now that Michkov is here, it's like, well, we have a boat, but could we have a luxury liner? And the idea is, well, if he's already great, why can't he be great at center rather than wing? And the point I made in this thread, and this is my opinion on the situation, is it would be awesome if Matvei Michkov, somewhere down the road, can work at center. I do not want him worrying about learning a new position in year one. I don't want anyone. I don't want the fans, but more importantly, because like fans can say what they want. Like they can ask for Shane Gostisbehere to be a forward for 6 straight years, and like it doesn't matter if the organization doesn't think it's a good idea. Like, sorry, you can keep shouting into the void. But I really don't want the organization to put even more on Michkov's plate in year one, because I would argue that right now there is nothing more important to the future of the franchise than Matvei Michkov becoming a really good NHL player. Nothing more important to the, let's say, the next 10 years of the Flyers organization than the prospect outcome of Matvei Michkov, that he isn't just a decent player. Of course that he's not a bust, but that he isn't just like, hey, he scores 50 points a year, he's a perfectly fine second line winger. Like, no, they need him to be at least a clear-cut first liner, and they really, really want him to be a star-level Batman type guy who can be the best player on a cup contender. If that's the most important thing, then year one has to be about increasing the likelihood as best you can that he reaches that point. And he's already going to be adapting to the best professional hockey league in the world in the NHL. KHL is good. It's not the NHL. The NHL is significantly better. There's going to be an adjustment period for him in terms of dealing with, quality competition, in terms of dealing with more physicality, in terms of dealing with the changes of style of play and the tactics that are used. That's going to take some time for him to fully adjust. And he's going to be fully adjusting off the ice to a brand new culture. He's not fluent in the language. He doesn't really know everyone. Now, the Flyers are going to do their best to help him, and it appears they are doing that with the idea of bringing over his brother and his mother, having him have a tutor. It looks like he's already getting integrated with his new teammates. He was over at the Phillies game with Joel Farabee and Cam York and everybody, which is great. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. This is going to be a year of him learning how to live in a new place and play in the most difficult league in the world. That is enough for now. Why make it even harder by having him do all those things and learn the finer points of the center position? My thing is, let him play his most comfortable position. I don't even want him playing left wing. I am sure that Matvei Michkov is smart enough and skilled enough that in the long term, if you need to push him over to the left side, he will do perfectly fine. But this season, if he's more comfortable on the right side, I want him playing right wing every fucking game, because I want him in the most comfortable position possible for him to be able to excel at the NHL level as quickly as possible, because that is the most important thing for this team. If a year down the road, 2 years down the road, Michkov is putting up incredible underlying metrics and he's fully bought into the spell of John Tortorella and is this tenacious defensive player, if you're looking at him and you're like, well, shit, I mean, he's smaller Tyson Forrester in terms of defensive awareness, then yeah, it would be great if he could become a full-time NHL center. For now, let's just let him play where he's most comfortable and make it as easy as possible for him to transition his game to the NHL level, rather than throwing another big transition point into what is already going to be a very difficult year for Matvei Michkov, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, I've basically said the exact same thing. The way that the Flyers view development, I think, comes in here as well. Not that I want Michkov playing in the AHL or anything, but it's similar to the idea of let a guy dominate at one level before moving him up to the next.
Yes.
Let's let him be the best right wing on the team before we think let's change his position.
Exactly.
Let's see if he's better than Travis Konechny first. And then once he is, it's oh, okay, well, now we can try this other thing.
Yeah.
That said, given what everyone has said about his IQ, all that, obviously the skill is off the chart, but just the the problem solving, the way he plays the game, the amount he has the puck on his stick may lend itself to center at some point.
Could.
The way it did with Claude Giroux.
Could.
I think we need to look no further than the last really great player we had here, who drafted as a right winger and then transitioned to center, because it was well, we need a 3C. And then eventually, became the 1C.
And we want him with the puck on his stick.
Yes.
And he showed. I mean, one thing we talked about a few weeks ago when we were going through the rankings, and we talked about the shift that Giroux had in Game 7 of the Boston series, where he's battling three guys and he's winning those battles. If by year 2, Michkov's doing that on a regular basis, and even though he's maybe 5'10" at best, is winning those battles along the boards and doing all those little things, then you're yeah, maybe he can be an NHL center and a damn good one at that. But I don't think it's something they should force on him, even if he wants to do it.
Yeah.
Even if he comes to them at the start of camp and says, I want to be a center, they should just be excel at right wing first.
Chill.
Then we'll talk.
Choose chill.
We
don't have them today. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's do some hypotheticals for What If Wednesday. I'm glad we just talked a little about that, because it's been something going around.
We have everybody in the chat throwing out long-term hypotheticals.
Yeah.
That's not really the focus of this one. This is 2024, 2025 hypotheticals.
Listen, if we do this the next couple of weeks, we're gonna talk about some long-term stuff. There's a few I left off here that I hopefully can get to in the coming weeks, but I just want to focus on these couple for today, and then we'll see where this goes.
Okay.
This is basically a mailbag, but questions I have, like rather than like asking other people, because that's a whole different thing. Mailbags. Listen, I'm trying my best here to come up with off-season content for all you, and this is what I came up with for today, and hopefully the next few Wednesdays. All right, so it's proposing some hypothetical scenarios. I tried to have some positives and negatives in here, so it's not all just like, well, what if Jamie Drysdale sucks? What if yes, that is the first one. But there are some positive ones too, so bear with us. But the first one I want to get to here, Charlie, it's a two-parter. The first part of it is, what if Jamie Drysdale isn't impressive?
Okay.
What do you think that means for this season, and what do you think that means in terms of team planning going forward? Now, this could be he misses a bunch of time again, or when he's out there, it's like, yeah, he's fast, and he can move the puck sometimes, but he's not even Shane Gostisbehere light. He's just a third-pair defenseman with some speed.
What I will say is that I don't necessarily think it's going to dramatically change the Flyers' view of him, because the people I've talked to, both on and off the record in the Flyers organization, very much view the Drysdale project as a long-term project.
This is a more than they set and forget kind of issue for them.
They do not think this is going to be a well, we brought Sean Walker in, and after one camp, he was awesome. They do not think that's going to be the case. They do not necessarily even think he's going to be awesome by the end of this season. They do want him to make progress. They want him to look better. They want him to be showing flashes, and they want him behind closed doors to be grasping concepts and to be taking instruction well and things like that. But there is a scenario where Jamie Drysdale's numbers don't look that great next year, and you still talk to the Flyer, Danny Briere and Keith Jones and everybody on the record, and then I'll talk to people off the record, and you'll still hear that we're still, bullish on his upside. We still think he's very good. Now, there's an element of this from the flip side where you're like, you might be too close to the situation. You're so high on what this guy could be that you're not seeing what's right in front of your face, and then he's actually not that good. For me, if he has an underwhelming season again, whether it's because he spends the year injured or whether it's because he's still putting up god-awful underlying 5-on-5 metrics, nor is he scoring a lot on the power play, it's going to increase the degree of urgency that I will be writing about in terms of them finding a solution on the back end. Because right now, they think Jamie Drysdale can be an impact player on the back end. Do they think he can be a do-it-all number one in the Miro Heiskanen mold? Nah, I don't think so. I think, it's a plausible outcome, but we're talking 3-4 percentage points of possibility. It's not likely. He's an offensively oriented defenseman who isn't that big. The chances of him becoming Cale Makar are pretty slim.
Low.
Where he's so good at all those things that it doesn't matter that sometimes he gets pushed out of the front of the net occasionally. I don't think he's going to be that good. But they think he can be an impact guy. If he has another underwhelming season by the numbers and overall by the eye test, I personally will be maybe they should maybe with one of those three first round picks, maybe you prioritize a high-end defenseman. Maybe not with that first pick, but maybe with the second one or third one, because you might need more help back there than you think. For them, though, I'm not sure if they change their tune dramatically, because they view the Drysdale reclamation project to be a 2 to 3 year project rather than one that's going to bear fruit immediately.
That's very interesting to think about. And I know that they've said all along, we don't think he was developed properly. So
they don't. They very much don't.
Therefore, they were basically starting from scratch with him. He was, even though he'd had, a full season and parts of a few other seasons in the league, it was he is a prospect in our eyes. So maybe that's the way it goes. I don't know if it'll really, I do think it changes in my mind what they need. Just in terms of...
That's my view, too. It changes in my mind what I would think they need.
While, again, I don't think he's ever going to be a Cale Makar. You do need defensemen who generate considerable offense. Now, if he is good on the power play and it's just like, okay, we can figure out the rest. Like my idea is like long term, they have a really good blue line and Hunter McDonald and Jamie Drysdale are together on that third pair and he can play some power play. Cool. But you need some defensemen, at least one guy in your top four who generates some pretty high end offense. They don't have that guy. They could draft him. It could still be coming. But of what they have right now, that high-end offense in your top four doesn't exist. I need him to be that. And if he can't be, that very much changes. Like, yeah, we need centers, but I need one defenseman who can do that thing. And hopefully he's it. If he has another less than impressive year, it's like this might move up to priority number one for me.
I would agree. I wouldn't say it would move up to priority one, but it would definitely move up my personal priority list. I think the best way for me to explain where my mindset would change is when I was doing all my draft research for this past draft, and I did a ton, I had a full ranking and everything. I ranked Zane Parekh pretty low in that top tier. Not because I didn't like him. Like, I had some concerns about him. He's very inconsistent in a lot of ways, particularly in terms of his defensive effort, and that worried me. But if I was covering a team that had different needs, I might have put him 3 or 4 places higher than I did. But my viewpoint was,
This is what we want Drysdale
drafting
to be.
You're drafting Parekh to do what you already think Drysdale is going to become. I don't think there's room for 2 of those guys with nearly identical theoretical skill sets on the same blue line. However, if Drysdale has another underwhelming season, now I haven't done enough research to know if there even is a Parekh type in this draft. Maybe if there is one, he's yet to have his breakout and he's going to have it in his draft year and then he's going to soar up the rankings. But if there is a Parekh type in next year's draft, I will be significantly more open to the idea of taking him with a high pick because I'm no longer thinking, well, how do Drysdale and this guy function on the same blue line? Because I might be thinking Jamie Drysdale might not be on the blue line when the Flyers are good.
In conjunction with this, and you're not a reactionary, so I can't imagine this changes your focus on like Jamie Drysdale and the Flyers team building, but it's fun.
But it's
what
fun.
if on top of Jamie Drysdale not looking all that good, Cutter Gauthier wins the Calder?
It wouldn't matter that much to me, but it would matter a lot to the fans.
Would it matter in your perception of the front office?
No, because it is what it is. Like, we've already broken down the possible reasons for why Gauthier turned on the Flyers. Like, whether he's good or not really isn't relevant to the mistakes or non-mistakes or Gauthier being a jerk or Gauthier being entitled. Like, none of that matters. It's just like I'm rooting for that not to happen because I have to deal with Flyers fans on a daily basis, and they would be fucking insufferable if that does happen.
Certainly.
But it really wouldn't change my opinion on much of anything because they were stuck. Like, guy wasn't going to play for them. Whether he's good or not, he wasn't going to play for them.
I think if we had maybe more names of who they were negotiating with, who they were negotiating for, but like the only thing I've heard definitely is like Arbor Xhekaj's name came up.
I heard Marco Rossi.
And okay, well that's a pretty good one. But like even like if it was Arbor Xhekaj, it's like, well, god damn it, I hope they were asking for more than just that.
Yeah.
But like I think if we had more, like, okay, but they could have had this guy, maybe that would change it a little bit. But Jamie Drysdale was like their target. They really liked him.
Yeah, they really like him. They're real high on him. So as I've said from really for months, I say it a lot in our Discord because people are always talking about Cutter Gauthier. It's that, and people are always talking about like did they get screwed in that deal? Should they have called Gauthier's bluff and going through all the scenarios? My viewpoint is always, from a pure value standpoint, I don't think it's a bad trade. Like, in terms of the way that Drysdale was valued around the league. Guys that skate that well, that are right-handed shooting defensemen, that were taken in the top 10 and are still that young, are valued like gold bullion around the league. Jamie Drysdale, at the moment he was traded, was a super high-value asset. You could make the case that Gauthier was valued higher. You know, he was coming off the big World Juniors, whatever. Don't underrate just how highly valued Jamie Drysdale was around the league. He was. If this trade works out where Drysdale just stinks and Gauthier is awesome, it is not a failure of negotiation because they got a highly valued player. It is a failure of talent evaluation because they got a highly valued player who they viewed as someone who's going to be an impact player, and then it turns out they're just wrong. But it's not like they traded for a guy who, if you asked 31 other teams, 25 of them would say, yeah, he's going to be a third pair defenseman at best. Like, a lot of teams in the league view Jamie Drysdale as a blue chip talent worthy of a massive return if he ever got moved. Flyers got a good return. They might just be wrong about him being as good as they think he is, and that's a scouting and player evaluation failure less than a negotiation failure.
All right, we have less than 10 minutes left in our poll up on our Twitter, deciding what next week's movie is going to be. So if you haven't already, head over to our Twitter, vote whether you want to see Mystery Alaska, Mighty Ducks Goon, or Youngblood featured on next week's Tuesday Reviewsday. And while we're taking a quick break from the What If Wednesday portion of the show, I got to tell you about our friends over at Shady Rays.
Yeah.
That's right. You got to get ready for all seasons with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. And it actually works perfectly that I left my other pair of Shady Rays here yesterday so I can take off my greens, put on my aviators for the rest of this read. See that? 2 pairs of Shady Rays. How did I get them? I got them by going to shadyrays.com and using code PHLY for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Listen, I am a big fan of the Shady Rays product. I've been wearing them for over a year now, and I don't know if I'm ever going back to the other sunglass companies. And one of the reasons, they have your back no matter the situation. If your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. Shady Rays has the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by lost or broken replacements. And if you don't love your shades, exchange for a new pair or return worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with personal and fast support. And like I said, this is exclusively for our listeners. Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code PHLY for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
Heyo.
And while we're telling you about places you can get a really good discount, you got to go to FOCO. That's right. Our buddies at FOCO are back, and FOCO has the absolute best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms. Whether it's hoodies, jackets, beachwear, even overalls. I know we're almost into August now. You got to start thinking about the season coming up. You know, maybe some postseason tailgates happening, beginning a hockey season, but there's still summer to be had. Whatever the occasion, you can shop for it at FOCO. And if you need some accessories, toys, or collectibles, they have you covered for your man, ked, she shed, or podcast needs. You got to use FOCO for all those team gear needs. FOCO always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in the description of the show. And for all non-presale items, use promo code PHLY10 for 10% off at FOCO today. That's PHLY10. Shop at FOCO. I bet you it doesn't suck. All right. I feel bad. Not everything you see online is true. Like that Stamco jersey that was going around for the Predators, it was a fake. Someone just kind of screwing with that other company. But you know what? You reap what you sow.
Yeah, it's true.
That doesn't happen at FOCO.
Sure doesn't.
All right. Let's get back to where the hell was I?
We just got through the Gautier misery.
I've lost this here. Okay, there we go. I see what happened. You put some of the mailbag stuff
I did
in there.
because, well, you had what if, and I thought it was interesting to talk about a question that was a what if question that was in the mailbag, which was, if you get a time machine and the ability to go back 15 years and change one draft pick, development of skill in a player, a trade, a contract, what do you do? Example, go back in time and teach Eric Lindros to skate with his head up. What one change has the biggest impact on the current day Flyers? I gave 2 answers because my real answer was not part of the parameters of this question, but I think it is the best answer. My answer based on the parameters was Heiskanen over Patrick, because I know people are going to be like, well, what about Makar? Number one, Heiskanen was the guy they wanted, the scouts wanted. Number two, I am not convinced the Flyers developed Cale Makar. I'm not.
And Cale Makar, man, you go back, like Colorado fans were like, what the fuck? Like they were not convinced. And it was, it was really, a little bit of a stretch.
I don't really care about whether it was a stretch or not. What I care about is I watched the Flyers handle Shane Gostisbehere. I am not convinced that Flyers organization would have let Cale Makar be Cale Makar.
Okay.
Whereas Miro Heiskanen is like the perfect NHL defenseman in terms of like he has no holes. Mm-hmm. I don't even think that Flyers coaching staff could have fucked him up. So I'm taking Heiskanen over Patrick and then giving the end of the Drury era a true number one defenseman, much better than Ivan Provorov, and seeing what they can do. However, my true time machine moment is I am returning to October 14th, 2011, and I am begging Chris Pronger to sit out that game, claim a family emergency, say you have a stomach bug, say you just don't feel like playing.
I'm not doing it.
I don't care. I want to see a world where he does not take that stick to the eye from Mikhail Gabrowski, and I get to see Chris Pronger be the number one defenseman of the Philadelphia Flyers through the end of the Holmgren era, so Holmgren doesn't lose his friggin' mind and trade for every bad defenseman in the world. Nick Grossman, Andrew McDonald, Pavel Kabina, like every single bad defenseman you can possibly think of trying to replace Chris Pronger. We get to see a blue line core with Pronger aging like a Hall of Fame defenseman usually ages, which is damn well behind young Giroux, Voracek, Couturier, Shen, Simmons, and see what that team could do. That is my time machine what if.
I take issue with the framing of teach Lindros to skate with his head up. It's not that he couldn't. It's that the technology didn't exist at the time. I would just like to bring him, if I had the time machine, just bring him a synergy. Just bring him, and like the Bauer stick that he used, like they developed, it was supposed to be lighter, it was a little bit different, but it wasn't hollow the way the new sticks are. And that way he would have been able to feel the puck with his head up and skate. I would like to just bring him that technology from just a few years in the future. Just bring him the Easton synergy and go, here you go, time to dominate. But yeah, that would be nice. But so many things.
But seriously, like the big problem with that Flyers club,
they had no defenseman.
It wasn't even that they had no defenseman. It was that they didn't have a number one defenseman.
Yeah.
Because if you have Pronger still, I wouldn't be surprised, because what they do is obviously they go in that playoff run, the Giroux moment against Crosby, and then they lose in round 2. So they lose in round 2, so they panic, and they fucking trade JVR for Shen because they need a right-handed shooting defenseman. I don't think that trade happens if Pronger's healthy, because I think they probably beat the Devils with Pronger.
Good chance.
Whether they win the cup that year or not, I don't know. But I think they beat the friggin' Devils at least, which changes that entire complexion. So I don't think JVR gets moved. I think there is a higher chance probably they re-sign Carl because he was Pronger's partner, and Carl probably ages better being next to Pronger. Coburn was still good. Tiemann, and you had a few more years. That top 4 is still real good with Pronger. The big thing and the reason why they went crazy going for Weber was because they didn't have the number 1.
Yep.
And then they spent the next 2-3 years trying to like Moneyball recreate Pronger in the aggregate by getting a bunch of crappy players that all were good at one thing that Pronger was good at, but as entire all-around defensemen freaking sucked, instead of, getting a guy who was actually good at hockey.
I'm at it's Pronger and Ghost on the same team. That would have been something. My next what if? What if Morgan Frost puts up 70 points? Because right now in my mind, I don't know, maybe you feel differently. Right now in my mind, Morgan Frost is a placeholder. Morgan Frost is, he might play 1C this year with Michkov, see what he has, cool. But I just don't picture him as part of the future with this team.
Still?
No.
Okay.
He sat 10 games last year. He sat the last game of the year for 32 minutes. I just don't see him as part of the future of this team. I think he is a placeholder until Jet Luchenko and one or two other guys are drafted, developed, acquired, whatever. What if, though, he puts up 70 points this year?
then he's the Flyers 2C. That's what I changed to. Then it's Morgan Frost is young enough to fit the timeline, and he is the Flyers' long-term 2C. It's hard for me to envision a scenario where even if a better power play and the emergence of Matvei Michkov as a high-end scorer as a rookie boosts Morgan Frost's counting stats, and John Tortorella finally decides to stop screwing with the kid, and he gets to like 70 points, it's not going to change my view necessarily of like his true talent level. It's just going to solidify the fact, because right now I am in the point where like he's in that, like he can be a middle six forward, middle six center on my team any day. If he can turn himself into a 70-point guy, even if it's partially inflated by Michkov, then he can be my second line center all day. I don't think I changed to think he's now, now they don't need a 1C. Like, no, now they got a 2C. Now you only have one spot to fill. Now, granted, it's the toughest spot to fill. But suddenly you're like, the center position doesn't look that bad. You've got Morgan Frost 2C. You've got Sean Couturier 3C, or if he's first half Sean Couturier, he is like 2CB to Frost. Yeah. And then it's like, all right, well, we've got Lushenko. I personally don't see 1C potential in him, but I think the Flyers do, and maybe they're right. And then you've got to maybe go out and find somebody else, whether that would, I don't know, and again, this is me just spitballing, but it's like, hey, if like a superstar 1C becomes available, like maybe turn Jet Lushenko into him.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
It makes me feel a lot better if Frost has a breakout year offensively. It makes me feel a lot better about their center depth. It doesn't change the fact that I still think they need a guy.
Yeah, no, that's exactly my position. Like if he plays 65 games, say, with Michkov this year, and they're good together, and he puts up those 70 points. Frost does. That doesn't stop me from thinking they need a 1C, but it's like, oh, okay. The center depth is good. Right. Not good, but it's much better than I thought. Yeah. And we'll get to, I want to save a Sean Couturier question for next year, but then it's like, yeah, there might be, if Sean Couturier is like good enough to be that middle six center and he can be consistent for you, like, all right, there are games where if the Flyers are up 3-1 after 2, Sean Couturier is going to lead the team in ice time.
Yeah.
And then
to be sure,
if the Flyers are down 3-1 after 2, we're going to see a ton of Morgan Frost, and that's fine. Yeah. Like, it doesn't change my overall, like, oh, yeah, they need to, no, once he's taken care of. Now, they still need that.
Sure do.
But it changes he's going to get another contract here. He is the 2C.
Yes.
And that is, they need that too.
They sure do.
They very badly need a 2C. Like, maybe Sean Couturier is fine.
There were games at the end of last season where Ryan Poehling got the most minutes of any center on the team.
Like,
they need a 2C.
Maybe Sean Couturier ends up being fine, but like, I ain't banking on that. That's not something I'm going forward like with that box is checked. Yeah. They need a 2C, and maybe Morgan Frost checks that then. Before we go with the final part of, you know what? That's enough for what ifs today, because we can get to the rest of these tomorrow. Okay. Before we get to the super chats, I want to thank our diehards. Thank you very much to all the subscribers out there at allphly.com who fork over their hard-earned cash to make sure we can do what we do here at PHLY. Your contributions are very much appreciated, as are our super chatters. Let's get to some of the super chats. We have 2 today. Of course, we have a Gary B. Why wouldn't we? Of course. Gary B, basically one of the co-hosts of the show.
He's been away for a while, though. We haven't seen some super chats from Gary B in a bit.
October 19th can't come soon enough. I have my tickets already. That's right. The pre-sale was yesterday. Today, general sale for the individual tickets. October 19th. I assume that's the home opener.
I would guess.
Because they open up 4 in a row.
On the road.
Because
of course they do.
We have the most anticipated player since Eric Lindros in this city. 4 straight 10 o'clock starts to open the season. They finally come home for that October 19th. I'm glad you're going, Gary. Hope as many people get to go as possible. But goddamn, 4 straight 10s. Charlie, you're going on the trip, so it's not too bad for you.
Yeah.
We'll be
here. I pity you.
We'll be here right in the studio for post games, and I'm told that we are going to be able to take callers for post-game this year, which really...
Bringing it back.
That really lightens the workload for me. Like, those old Broad Street hockey post-games were the shit when I could just like, yeah, man, have at it. Like, I'm just drinking beer, basically responded to your diatribe. This is great.
Yep.
So hopefully we'll be able to do that again this year. But Gary, I'm glad you got your tickets. Hope everyone out there did as well. And the second one from Hat Trick Patrick. New here. What's up, guys? Well, welcome.
Welcome, Hat Trick Patrick.
Torts and Shaw turned Rasmus Ristolainen into a serviceable D-man. It was their magnum opus. Surely they can work wonders on Jamie Drysdale.
It's a reasonable point. And I think
Certainly.
that is the hope. The hope is that Bradshaw is the defenseman whisperer. And I do agree. I agree that Ristolainen is Shaw's magnum opus. However, there are minor masterpieces as well in the form of Nick Seeler, in the form of Sean Walker. He's done this to multiple defensemen since becoming an assistant coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. So, yes, I agree the magnum opus is Risto, turning him into an actually good defensive defenseman, but that was not a one-time fluke. He's improved multiple defensemen since taking over, and out of all three, I think Jamie Drysdale has the most impressive skill set to work with.
I don't know. I was going to say, like, Ristolainen has a lot of tools.
He does.
Like, it's not as if he's this
bigger,
talentless hack.
He's bigger, he's stronger, he has some puck skills.
He can skate. We've seen him put up points. Now, it was on the power play before.
Yeah.
But, like, and it was Buffalo, and they just sucked and threw him out there and let him do his thing.
And they had Jack Eichel to get it. He got a lot of secondary assists passing the puck to Jack Eichel.
But, like, it's not like Ristolainen is some talentless hack, but I would take what Drysdale has already, like in terms of raw tools, that skating ability and everything. Let's see. Who is more important, though, for Drysdale? Is it Shaw and what Jamie does defensively, or is it Rocky Thompson in the power play? Because, like, if he's the quarterback of power play one and does that very effectively to the point where, like, okay, the offensive humming, we have Michkov on the back, we have, or on the wall, I guess, if we're going to do that stupid shit. I know it's what every team does, but it's not what I want to do. And then we have up top, we have Drysdale, and the power play is at least effective. We're not going to call it great. A low-end possibility of that this year. But it's effective enough.
Okay.
Which one of those is more important?
I think Shaw is more important to his quality as a player because it's very easy if you pay attention to stats. It's very easy to isolate 5-on-5 play and evaluate that in a vacuum and say, wow, Jamie Drysdale used to stink at 5-on-5 and now he's really good. And we can measure just how much better he's gotten due to the influence of Brad Shaw. That is very easy to measure. However, in terms of public perception, the people look at points, baby. The people look at points. And if Drysdale dramatically improves at 5-on-5 and all of us stat nerds are like, yo, Drysdale's legit now. If he's still finishing with 29 points because the power play is garbage, most fans are going to say he's a bust. So I would say in terms of his development as a player, Shaw. In terms of his perception by the public, maybe Thompson.
All right, and that is all the time we have for you on PHLY Flyers today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. If you haven't already, you got to hit that subscribe button. Follow us right here on YouTube. Never miss a live show. Hit those reminders. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. our normal time right here. Follow us on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers and follow the podcast as well wherever you get those. Just search PHLY Flyers. All right, my name is Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. Until tomorrow, stay loose and sexy, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.